Most people never learn these lessons. That's why they suffer. Stoicism, Stoic Wisdom. Introduction, awakening to a life without unnecessary suffering. Imagine for a moment that you are sailing on a stormy sea. The waves crash violently against the hull of your boat. The wind howls in your ears, and the torrential rain obscures your vision. Most people, faced with this situation, would panic. They would scream at the storm, curse the gods, fight desperately against forces completely beyond their control. But 2,000 years ago, a group of philosophers discovered something revolutionary. The problem was never the storm. The problem was always our reaction to it. This is the essence of Stoicism, a philosophy that transformed emperors and slaves, generals and merchants into masters of their own lives. Today, as you watch this video, millions of people around the world are suffering needlessly. Not because their lives are particularly difficult, though many are, but because they have never learned the fundamental lessons the Stoics discovered millennia ago. Lessons that, once understood and applied, have the power to completely transform your life experience. Before we continue this transformative journey, I ask you to do something simple but important. Subscribe to the channel and turn on your notification bell. Why? Because what I'm going to share with you in the next few minutes is not just another superficial self-help video. It is a profound exploration of principles that have survived empires, wars, plagues, and revolutions. Principles that remain as relevant today as they were when Marcus Aurelius wrote them in his tent on the borders of the Roman Empire. The first forgotten lesson, the dichotomy of control, the first and most fundamental lesson that most people never learn, is simultaneously the simplest and the hardest to accept. There are only two categories of things in the universe, those that are within our control and those that are not. This distinction, known as the dichotomy of control, was first articulated by Epictetus, a slave who became one of the most influential philosophers in history. Epictetus was born a slave in Phrygia, present-day Turkey, around 50 AD. His master, Epictetus, was secretary to Nero, one of the most notorious Roman emperors. It is said that Epictetus, in a fit of rage, broke Epictetus's leg, leaving him lame for the rest of his life. But it was precisely through this brutal experience that Epictetus came to a profound understanding. Although he could not control what happened to his body, he had absolute control over how he responded mentally to those events. Think about this for a moment. How many hours of your day do you spend worrying about things that are completely beyond your control? The behavior of others, the weather, the economy, political decisions, the past, the uncertain future. Now imagine if all that mental energy were redirected toward the only things you can truly control: your thoughts, your decisions, your actions, your responses. Most people live in a constant state of frustration because they try to control the uncontrollable. It's like trying to hold water in your hands. The tighter you hold it, the more it slips through your fingers. The Stoic understands that the only thing truly under our control is our ability to choose, what the Greeks called prohairesis. This is our inner fortress, the only territory over which we are absolute sovereigns. But here's the paradox that confounds most. By accepting what we cannot control, we gain immense power over our lives. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher-emperor who ruled Rome at the height of its power, wrote in his Meditations, "You have power over your mind, not over external events. Realize this, and you will find strength." This man, who commanded legions and ruled millions, understood that his true power lay not in his title or his army, but in his ability to maintain mental composure regardless of the circumstances. Let's make this practical. Imagine you're stuck in traffic, late for an important meeting. The average person would fly into a rage, honk their horn, curse at other drivers, obsessively check their watch. Each of these actions is a futile attempt to control the uncontrollable. The Stoic on the other hand, recognizes immediately the traffic is beyond my control. What is within my control? My response to this situation. I can use this time to practice patience, to listen to an audiobook, to mentally plan my day, to simply breathe and be present. This shift in perspective may seem small, but its implications are revolutionary. When you stop wasting energy trying to control the uncontrollable, that energy becomes available to focus on what truly matters. You stop being a victim of circumstances and become the architect of your inner experience. The second lesson, amor fati, the radical embrace of fate. Second lesson most people never learn is even more counterintuitive than the first. We must not only accept what happens, we must love it. The Stoics called this amor fati, love of fate. It is not passive resignation or defeatist submission. It is an active and enthusiastic embrace of everything life presents us, recognizing that every event, no matter how challenging, is an opportunity for growth and character development. Nietzsche, though not a Stoic, perfectly captured this concept when he wrote, "My formula for greatness in a human being is amor fati, that one should not desire anything different, neither forward nor backward nor in all eternity. Not merely to endure what is necessary, still less to conceal it. All idealism is falsehood in the face of the necessary, but to love it." Consider the story of James Stockdale, an American naval pilot who was shot down over North Vietnam in 1965. He spent the next 7.5 years as a prisoner of war, 4 of them in solitary confinement. He was tortured repeatedly, his legs broken, and left in irons for months. How did he survive this ordeal mentally and emotionally? Through the direct application of Stoic principles, particularly the teachings of Epictetus, which he had studied before his capture. Stockdale not only survived, he led the American prisoner resistance, developing a code of communication by knocking on the walls, organizing the prisoners, and maintaining morale. When asked years later how he managed to maintain his sanity, he replied, "I never lost faith in the end of the story. I never doubted not only that I would get out, but also that I would prevail in the end and transform the experience into the defining experience of my life, one that, in retrospect, I would not trade." This is the power of amor fati. It's not about enjoying suffering. That would be masochism. It's about recognizing that every experience, pleasant or unpleasant, is an integral part of the tapestry of your life. Remove any thread, and the entire fabric unravels. The Stoic understands that to wish things were different is to wish for a different life, and to wish for a different life is to reject the only life you have. This life, here, now. But how do we cultivate this radical acceptance? It begins with a fundamental shift in our internal narrative. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" the Stoic asks, "How is this happening to me?" This simple reframing transforms you from victim to student, from patient to agent. Let me give a personal example that illustrates this principle. Imagine an entrepreneur who spent years building their business, only to see it fail during an economic recession. The common response would be devastation, depression, and anger at the universe. But applying amor fati, this entrepreneur sees the situation differently. This failure is part of my journey. What lessons does it contain? What character strength can I develop through this experience? How can I use this apparent setback as a springboard to something greater? This isn't superficial positive thinking. It's a profound recognition that adversity is the gymnasium where character is forged. Seneca, the Roman Stoic who was an advisor to Nero, wrote, "Every new thing excites the mind, but a disciplined mind is disturbed by nothing. It keeps its balance and observes everything objectively." If you find value in this profound exploration of Stoic wisdom, please like the video. This not only helps the channel grow, but also allows more people to discover these transformative lessons that can radically change the quality of their lives. The third lesson, Memento mori, the awareness of mortality as fuel for life. The third, lesson that most people avoid at all costs, and that is precisely why they suffer, the regular and honest contemplation of our own mortality. Memento mori, remember that you will die. In ancient Rome, when a general returned victorious from a military campaign, parading through the streets in his triumphal chariot, a slave would stand behind him constantly whispering, "Memento mori, memento mori." Remember that you are mortal. Remember that you will die. To the modern mind, conditioned to avoid any thought of death, this seems morbid, depressing, counterproductive. But the Stoics understood something that our consumerist culture desperately tries to hide. The awareness of death is what gives life its flavor. It is the deadline that makes each moment precious. It is the darkness against which the light shines most brightly. Marcus Aurelius meditated on death daily, not for morbidity, but for clarity. He wrote, "It is not death that a man should fear, but never beginning to live." Think about that. How many people do you know who are technically alive but experientially dead, who spend their days in a haze of distraction, perpetually postponing real life to some future moment that never arrives? Steve Jobs, in his famous Stanford speech, captured this Stoic truth when he said, "Remembering that you are going to die is the best way I know to avoid the trap of thinking you have something to lose. You are already naked. There is no reason not to follow your heart." Jobs meditated on death daily, looking in the mirror each morning and asking, "If today were the last day of my life, would I want to do what I'm about to do today?" Contemplating death is not about living recklessly, as if each day were literally your last. It is about living deliberately, aware that our time is finite and therefore infinitely valuable. Seneca advised, "Let each man examine his thoughts. He will find them all occupied with the future." We do not like to think about what we have, but about what we lack. Let's make this viscerally real. Imagine you're 30 years old. The average life expectancy is about 80 years. That means you have approximately 50 years left. Sounds like a long time, doesn't it? But let's break it down. 50 years is 18,250 days. But wait, you sleep a third of that time. So that's really 12,166 days awake. Subtract the time spent on necessary but not particularly meaningful activities, eating, commuting, household chores, and you have perhaps 6,000 days of conscious, engaged life remaining. 6,000 days. When put like that, every day wasted on resentment, on worrying about what others think, on postponing what truly matters, seems criminally negligent. Memento mori isn't about fearing death. It's about fearing a life unlived. The Stoics practiced an exercise called premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. They regularly visualized the loss of everything they held dear, their health, their wealth, their loved ones, their very lives. Not to torture themselves, but to deeply appreciate what they had while they had it, and to mentally prepare themselves for inevitable loss. This exercise has a paradoxical effect. By imagining loss, you appreciate what you have more deeply. By accepting impermanence, you stop taking things for granted. Every meal with your family becomes precious when you recognize their finite number. Every sunset takes on a poignant beauty when you know you'll only see a limited number of them. The fourth lesson, the view from above, cosmic perspective. The fourth lesson most people never learn is the importance of cosmic perspective, what Marcus Aurelius called the view from above. And it's the ability to zoom out from our immediate concerns and see our lives, our problems, our entire existence from the perspective of the cosmos. This shift in perspective has the power to instantly dissolve anxieties that seem overwhelming. When viewed up close, imagine rising above your current situation. First, you see your house, then your street, your city. Keep rising. Now you see your country, your continent, the entire planet. Continue. The solar system, the galaxy, the observable universe with its billions of galaxies. From this cosmic height, that argument with your co-worker, that overdue bill, that romantic rejection, how significant do they seem now? Carl Sagan, though not a Stoic, captured this perspective perfectly when he described the Earth photographed. By Voyager 1 from 6 billion kilometers away, look again at this dot. This is it. This is home. This is us. On it, everyone you love, everyone you know, everyone you ever heard of, every human being who ever was, lived out their lives. This perspective isn't about nihilism or the insignificance of human life. It's about proportion. It's about recognizing that most of the things that cause us stress and suffering are, in the grand scheme of things, trivialities inflated by our myopic perspective. Marcus Aurelius, ruling the greatest empire the world had ever seen, constantly reminded himself, in a short time, you and everyone you know will be dead, and soon even your name will be forgotten. Again, this may sound depressing to the untrained mind, but to the Stoic, it is liberating. If nothing we do will matter in 1,000 years, then we are free to focus on what matters now, living according to our values, treating others with kindness, developing our character, contributing to the common good while we have the chance. The bird's-eye view also helps us understand our interconnectedness with all that exists. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Constantly consider the universe as a single living being, having one substance and one soul. Observe how all things have reference to one perception, the perception of this one living being, and how all things act with one movement, and how all things are the cooperating causes of all things that exist." This understanding of universal interconnectedness has profound practical implications. When you recognize that you are part of a greater whole, petty selfishness dissolves. You stop seeing others as competitors and begin to see them as collaborators in a shared cosmic project. Your personal problems, while still real and worthy of attention, are placed in a perspective that makes them manageable rather than overwhelming. The fifth lesson, the obstacle is the way. The fifth lesson that completely transforms our experience of life is this: what impedes action becomes the action. What stands in the way becomes the way. This is perhaps the most counterintuitive of all Stoic lessons, and yet it is the one with the most immediate power to transform adversity into advantage. Marcus Aurelius articulated this principle with characteristic elegance. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. In other words, every obstacle carries within it the seed of an equal or greater benefit. Not despite the obstacle, but because of it. Consider the story of Demosthenes, the greatest orator of ancient Greece. He was born with a severe speech impediment. He stuttered terribly and had a weak voice. By any rational measure, he was the last person who should pursue a career in public speaking. But Demosthenes saw his impediment not as a barrier, but as his most rigorous trainer. He practiced speaking with stones in his mouth to strengthen his diction. He spoke against the roar of the ocean waves to develop the power of his voice. He ran while reciting speeches to increase his lung capacity. The obstacle, his speech impediment, became the very path to his mastery. Not despite his disability, but because of it, Demosthenes developed a discipline and technique that naturally gifted orators never needed to cultivate. This principle applies to every area of life. Lost your job? This obstacle is the path to discovering a career more aligned with your values. A relationship ended. This obstacle is the path to self-knowledge and emotional growth. A health problem? This obstacle is the path to developing discipline, appreciation, and perspective. But here's the crucial point most miss. It's not that the obstacle eventually leads to something good. It's that the obstacle is the good, if approached with the right mindset. Ryan Holiday, in his modern book on Stoic philosophy, tells the story of John D. Rockefeller during the Panic of 1857. While others panicked about the economic collapse, Rockefeller, then a young accountant, calmly observed the chaos. He studied how businesses failed, why investors panicked, how fear spread through the market. This obstacle, a devastating recession, became his education in business resilience. The lessons he learned during that crisis formed the foundation of his eventual business empire. The obstacle wasn't something he overcame to achieve success. The obstacle was the teacher that made success possible. If you're finding value in these profound lessons, please consider subscribing to the channel and turning on notifications. Each week, we explore ancient wisdom that has the power to transform your modern life. Your subscription not only supports the channel, but ensures you don't miss any of these transformative explorations. The sixth lesson, Premeditatio Malorum, the power of negative visualization. The sixth lesson that most people actively avoid and suffer tremendously for is the practice of negative visualization. Premeditatio Malorum, or the premeditation of evils. In a culture obsessed with positive thinking and manifestation, the idea of deliberately imagining losses and setbacks seems not only counterintuitive, but potentially harmful. However, the Stoics understood that this practice is one of the most powerful tools for building resilience and appreciation. Seneca, one of the richest men in Rome, regularly practiced voluntary poverty. For several days each month, he slept on the floor, wore his simplest clothes, and ate only bread and water. Why? To remove the fear of poverty. He reasoned, "It is likely that some evil will befall us, but it is not present now. How many things happen unexpectedly? How many expected things never happen? And even if it does, what good is it to encounter the pain before it arrives?" This practice serves multiple purposes. First, it removes the fear of the unknown. When you mentally rehearse potential losses, losing your job, your health, your loved ones, you discover that, although painful as these losses are, they are survivable. The fear is often worse than the reality. Second, it inoculates you against the shock. If the loss actually occurs, you've already processed it mentally. You have a plan. You're not caught completely off guard. But perhaps the most profound benefit is the increased gratitude. When Seneca returned to his life of comfort after his days of voluntary poverty, every simple convenience seemed like a luxury. The bed he took for granted now seemed wonderfully comfortable. The simple food seemed like a feast. By imagining the loss, we experience recovery, a psychological phenomenon where we temporarily appreciate what we have more deeply. Let's apply this practically. Imagine losing your sight. Really imagine it. How would you navigate your home? How would you communicate? What pleasures would you lose? What adaptations would you have to make? Sit with this visualization for a few minutes. Now open your eyes, look around. The simple ability to see something you probably haven't given a second thought to today suddenly seems miraculous. Tim Ferriss, a modern entrepreneur and author, uses a version of this practice he calls fear definition. When faced with an important decision, he writes out the worst-case scenario in detail. What exactly would happen? How would he handle it? Often he discovers that the worst-case scenario isn't as catastrophic as his vague, undefined fear suggested. And having defined and planned for it, he can proceed with confidence. This isn't pessimism or catastrophizing, it's rational preparation. A ship's captain isn't pessimistic because he has lifeboats, he's prudent. An investor isn't negative because he diversifies, he's wise. The Stoic who practices premeditatio malorum isn't inviting disaster. He's building psychological resilience. The seventh lesson, the discipline of desire. The seventh lesson that most people never learn and consequently live in a perpetual state of dissatisfaction is the discipline of desire. In a culture that bombards us with messages to want more, buy more, achieve more, be more, the Stoics offer a radical perspective. The key to happiness is not getting what you want, but wanting what you have. Epictetus taught that there are three disciplines in Stoicism: the discipline of desire, the discipline of action, and the discipline of assent. The first and most fundamental is the discipline of desire, learning to desire only what is within our control and accepting with equanimity what is not. Consider the hedonistic paradox. The more we pursue pleasure directly, the more it eludes us. It's like trying to catch a butterfly. Chase it, and it will always fly away. Sit still, and it might land on your shoulder. The Stoics understood that lasting satisfaction comes not from acquiring more, but from needing less. This doesn't mean extreme asceticism or the rejection of all pleasures. Marcus Aurelius enjoyed hot baths and good food. Seneca was immensely wealthy. The difference is that they owned their possessions rather than being owned by them. They enjoyed preferential things without becoming slaves to them. The Greek word for this is autarkeia, self-sufficiency, not in the sense of isolation or total independence, but in the sense of inner completeness. The Stoic cultivates a state where their happiness and peace are independent of external circumstances. As Seneca wrote, "Every man is unhappy in proportion to the extent to which he has convinced himself that he needs happiness." Let's examine how undisciplined desire creates suffering. You desire a promotion. You get it. There's a brief moment of satisfaction. Then what happens? You immediately start craving the next promotion. You buy your dream car. For a few weeks you're ecstatic, then it becomes just your car, and you start noticing newer, better models. This phenomenon, known as hedonic adaptation, ensures that we will always be dissatisfied if our strategy is to pursue satisfaction through external acquisition. The Stoics offer an alternative. Instead of constantly seeking to add, practice subtraction. Instead of asking, "What do I lack?" ask, "What can I give up?" This is not deprivation, it is liberation. Every desire you eliminate is one less chain holding you back. The eighth lesson, universal sympathy, the interconnectedness of all things. The eighth lesson, which our modern individualistic culture has almost completely lost, is the concept of sympatheia, universal sympathy or cosmic interconnectedness. The Stoics saw the universe not as a collection of separate objects, but as a single living organism, with each part affecting all the others. This understanding radically transforms how we relate to other human beings and the world around us. Marcus Aurelius, writing from his military tents on the borders of the empire, constantly reminded himself ever of this truth. What is not good for the swarm is not good for the bee. He understood that individual well-being is inseparable from collective well-being. To harm another is literally to harm oneself, because we are all part of the same whole. This is not an empty poetic metaphor. Modern science confirms what the Stoics intuited. We are literally made of the same star stuff. We share DNA with all life forms. We participate in the same cycles of energy and matter that connect the entire cosmos. The oxygen you breathe was exhaled by plants. The atoms in your body were forged in the hearts of dying stars. You are not in the universe. You are the universe experiencing itself subjectively. The practical implications of this understanding are profound. When you truly grasp interconnectedness, compassion becomes logical, not just emotional. Helping others is not charity, it is enlightened self-interest. Anger toward another human being becomes as irrational as your right hand becoming angry with your left hand. Heracles, a Stoic philosopher, developed an exercise to cultivate this awareness. He imagined concentric circles emanating from each person. The innermost circle contains the self, the next contains immediate family, then friends, community, country, humanity, all sentient beings. The practice is to gradually contract these circles, bringing those in the outer circles closer to the center, until eventually you treat all of humanity as family. This expansion of concern does not diminish care for those close to you. It is like love. It is not a finite resource that depletes with use. The more you practice compassion, the stronger it becomes. A parent who develops universal sympathy does not love their own children less. They simply recognize all their children as deserving of care and protection. Universal sympathy also transforms how we deal with difficult people. When someone acts with anger or cruelty, the Stoic sees not an enemy, but someone in pain, someone ignorant of their true nature. Marcus Aurelius advised, "Whenever you want to rejoice, consider the virtues of those who live with you, the energy of one, the modesty of another, the generosity of a third. Nothing brings me so much joy as the examples of virtue manifested in the character of those who live with me." If these lessons resonate with you, if you're feeling a shift in your perspective, please like the video and share in the comments. Which lesson is impacting you most deeply? Your participation not only helps the channel, but creates a community of seekers exploring this ancient wisdom together. The ninth lesson: the present is all there is. The ninth lesson that escapes most people condemning them to live perpetually in the past or future is the absolute supremacy of the present moment. The Stoics understood a truth that mystics of all traditions have discovered. The past exists only in memory, the future only in imagination. The only real moment, the only moment where life happens, where decisions are made, where character is built, is now. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Confine yourself to the present. This is not a suggestion to ignore planning or learning from experience. It is an acknowledgement that all psychological suffering comes from our mind wandering to the past, creating regret, resentment, nostalgia, or to the future, creating anxiety, fear, expectation." Think about your own mental patterns. When you are anxious, what are you anxious about? Always something that might happen in the future. When you are depressed, you are often ruminating about the past. But in this very moment, not 5 minutes from now, not 5 minutes ago, but now, is there a problem? Usually the answer is no. Problems exist in psychological time, not in the present moment. The Stoics developed specific practices to anchor awareness in the present. One was prososche, continuous attention to the present moment, not as a meditation practice separate from life, but as a quality of awareness brought to all activities. When they ate, they truly savored the food. When they walked, they felt every step. When they talked, they gave it their full attention. This presence is not passivity. It is the state of greatest power. All your faculties are available only in the present. You cannot make a decision in the past or future. You cannot act except now. You cannot change except in this moment. The present is the lever where all change happens. Eckhart Tolle, though not a Stoic, beautifully articulates this principle. Realize deeply that the present moment is all you have. Make now the primary focus of your life. When you do this, something remarkable happens. Problems dissolve, not situations. They remain and require action. No, but the psychological suffering we create through mental resistance to what is, that disappears. The 10th lesson: virtue as the only true good. The 10th lesson, perhaps the most radical and transformative of all, is that there is only one true good: virtue. Not virtue in the narrow moralistic sense, but arete, excellence of character, the full flowering of human potential. The Stoics argued that everything else, health, wealth, reputation, even life, are preferred indifference, pleasant to have, but not necessary for the good life. This statement seems absurd to the modern mind. How can health not be a good? How can poverty not be an evil? The Stoics answered with impeccable logic. If something can be used for both good and evil, it cannot be intrinsically good or evil. Wealth can fund charity or corruption. Health can energize virtue or vice. Even life can be lived nobly or shamefully. But virtue, wisdom, justice, courage, temperance, these are always and only good. They cannot be misused. They cannot be taken away from you. They are the only thing that remains entirely within your control, no matter the circumstances. Consider the story of Cato the Younger, the Roman Stoic who became the symbol of republican virtue. When Julius Caesar marched on Rome, effectively ending the Republic, Cato had a choice. He could have surrendered and likely received clemency and even honors from Caesar. Instead, he chose suicide, not out of despair, but as a final act of defiance, refusing to live under tyranny. Now, we can debate the ethics of suicide, but the point is this: for Cato, virtue, in this case his integrity and commitment to republican liberty, was literally more valuable than life. He would rather die virtuous than live compromised. This is the extreme application of the Stoic principle, but it illustrates the point. When you value virtue above all else, you become invincible. Nothing can be taken from you that you value more than your character. But what is virtue in practical terms? The Stoics identified 4 cardinal virtues: wisdom, Sophia, the ability to discern what is true, what is important, what is within our control. It is not academic knowledge, but practical wisdom. Phronesis, knowing the right thing to do in every situation. Justice, dikaiosine, treating others fairly, giving each their due, recognizing our interconnectedness and acting accordingly. Justice is not just avoiding harming others, but actively working for the common good. Courage, Andrea, not just physical bravery, but moral courage. The courage to stand up for what is right, to face difficult truths, to persist despite fear. As Seneca said, every new beginning comes from some end of another beginning. Temperance, sophrosine, moderation, self-discipline, the ability to resist excess. It's not deprivation, but the sweet spot where you have enough but not too much. It's mastery over your desires rather than slavery to them. These 4 virtues are really aspects of a single virtue: living in accordance with nature, realizing your potential as a rational social human being. When you live virtuously, you experience eudaimonia, human flourishing, the good life, not happiness in the modern sense of feeling good, but the deep satisfaction of living well. The 11th lesson, mental reservation. The Stoic clause, the 11th lesson that guards against disappointment and frustration, is the practice of mental reservation, what the Stoics called hypexeresis. It's the habit of adding a mental clause to all our plans and expectations, if nothing prevents it, if fate permits, if nature wills it. This may seem pessimistic or uncommitted. In fact, it's the opposite. It's a realistic recognition that, while we control our actions, we do not control outcomes. It's the difference between "I'm going to get this job" and "I'm going to give this interview my best shot, and if nothing stands in my way, I'll get the job." Seneca exemplified this when he wrote to a friend, "When you get up in the morning, say to yourself, today I will encounter interference, ingratitude, insolence, disloyalty, ill will, and selfishness." This isn't cynicism, it's preparation. When you expect obstacles, you won't be caught off guard when they appear. James Stockdale, the pilot who survived 7 years as a prisoner of war using Stoic principles, articulated what became known as Stockdale's paradox. You must never confuse faith that you will prevail in the end, that you can never afford to lose, with the discipline to confront the most brutal facts of your present reality, whatever they may be. The prisoners who broke first were not the pessimists, but the optimists, the ones who said, "We'll be out by Christmas." Then Christmas passed. "We'll be out by its Easter." Then Easter passed. Eventually, they died of broken hearts. Stockdale held out hope for eventual liberation while accepting that it might not happen in any specific time frame. Mental reservation doesn't diminish effort or commitment. You still act with full intensity toward your goals. The difference is that you're not attached to a specific outcome. You focus on the process, not the product. You measure success by your effort and intention, not by external results. This practice has profound daily applications. Planning a picnic? We'll have a great time in the park, weather permitting. Starting a business? I'll build a successful company if market conditions cooperate. Entering a relationship? We'll build something beautiful together if we're compatible and both grow in the same direction. The 12th lesson. Sympathia and oikeiosis, belonging to the whole. The 12th lesson expands our understanding of identity beyond the confines of the individual ego. The Stoics called this oikeiosis, the process of recognizing things as belonging, yourself, expanding the circle of what we consider us versus them. It begins with basic self-preservation and expands to encompass all of humanity and even the cosmos. A newborn baby recognizes only its own needs. Gradually, it recognizes its parents as its own, then siblings, extended family, friends, community. Ethical development, according to the Stoics, is to continue this process of expansion until we recognize all of humanity as our family, the entire cosmos as our home. This is not vague idealism. It is a practical recognition of reality. You share 99.9% of your DNA with every other human being. You are made of the same elements as the stars. You participate in the same processes that govern everything from quarks to quasars. Separation is illusion. Connection is reality. Marcus Aurelius, constantly dealing with difficult, treacherous, even violent people, maintained this perspective. We are born to work together, like feet, hands, and eyes, like the two rows of teeth, upper and lower, inferior, obstructing one another is unnatural. When someone harmed him, he remembered, this person is related, not necessarily by blood, but by sharing divine reason. This expansion of identity has revolutionary practical consequences. Racism, nationalism, and every form of tribalism become impossible when you genuinely recognize everyone as family. Environmental destruction becomes unthinkable when you recognize nature as your extended body. Petty selfishness dissolves when you understand that serving others is serving yourself. The practice of oikeiosis doesn't require you to like everyone equally or ignore real differences. It's about recognizing fundamental kinship while dealing with practical particularities. You still protect your children more fiercely than strangers, but you recognize all children as worthy of protection. If you find these lessons profound and transformative, please consider sharing this video with someone who could benefit from this wisdom. Every share helps spread these timeless teachings to those who need them most. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications to continue this journey of philosophical discovery with us. The 13th lesson, ataraxia, unshakable peace. The 13th lesson reveals the ultimate goal of Stoic practice, ataraxia, state of unshakable serenity, a peace that persists regardless of external circumstances. It is not apathy or emotional indifference, but a profound equanimity born of wisdom and proper perspective. Imagine a perfectly calm mountain lake. Storms may agitate the surface, but the depths remain undisturbed. This is ataraxia. You still experience surface emotions appropriate to the situation, but your core remains serene. You can cry at a funeral without being devastated. You can celebrate successes without becoming dependent on them. Parho of Elis, though not a Stoic but influenced. Stoicism demonstrated ataraxia dramatically. During a storm at sea, while all the passengers panicked, Pyrrho remained calm, pointing to a pig on the deck that continued to eat peacefully, unperturbed by the storm. "This one," he said, "it is the state of mind that the wise man must maintain." But ataraxia is not emotional suppression or pretending that bad things aren't bad. It is deeply understanding that external events cannot touch your faculty of choice, your character, your essential self. As Epictetus taught, it is not the things themselves that disturb us, but our judgments about those things. Viktor Frankl, Holocaust survivor and psychologist, though not a Stoic, articulated this principle perfectly. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In this space lies our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. This space, this ability to choose our response, is where ataraxia resides. Stoic peace is not achieved through avoiding difficulties, but through willingly exposing them with the appropriate mindset. It's like developing immunity through controlled exposure. Each time you maintain equanimity in the face of provocation, your capacity for ataraxia strengthens. The 14th lesson, phronesis, practical wisdom. The 14th lesson focuses on phronesis, practical wisdom, the ability to discern the right action in specific situations. It's not abstract knowledge, but applied intelligence, knowing not just what is right in theory, but how to implement it in the messy complexity of real life. Aristotle, who influenced the Stoics, distinguished between Sophia, theoretical wisdom, and phronesis, practical wisdom. You can know all the ethical principles in the world, but without phronesis, you won't know how to apply them. When your mother-in-law insults your cooking, your boss takes credit for your work, or your teenage, and challenges your authority. Phronesis recognizes that ethical principles sometimes come into tension. Honesty is a virtue. But what about when the truth would needlessly hurt someone? Courage is a virtue. But what about when discretion is the better part of valor? Practical wisdom navigates these complexities, finding the appropriate response to each unique situation. Marcus Aurelius demonstrated phronesis consistently. As emperor, he had absolute power to impose his will. But he understood that effective leadership required calibrating your response to each situation. Sometimes this meant firmness, sometimes mercy, sometimes decisive action, sometimes strategic patience. Developing phronesis requires experience, reflection, and humility. You must be willing to make mistakes and learn from them. You must observe those wiser than you and understand not only what they do, but why and when they do it. You must develop sensitivity to context and nuance. The 15th lesson, the fire within, keep principles under pressure. The 15th and final lesson we will explore is about maintaining your inner fire, your principles, values, and commitments, even when the world tries to extinguish them. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Whatever stands in my way is material for my fire." Every obstacle, every pressure, every temptation to compromise your values is fuel to strengthen your character. Consider the story of Thomas More, who, though a Christian, exemplified Stoic virtue. When King Henry VIII demanded that More endorse his divorce and break with Rome, More refused. He lost position, wealth, freedom, and ultimately his life. But he retained something more valuable: integrity. His last words were, "I die a good servant to the king, but to God first." Maintaining principles under pressure is not about rigidity or self-righteousness. It is about clarity about your non-negotiable core values and a willingness to pay the price for maintaining them. As Seneca warned, every man has his price. The Stoic strives to be the exception, to have values that no amount of pleasure could tempt or pain could coerce betrayal. But here's the paradox. The more willing you are to lose everything for your principles, the less likely you are to lose them. When others see that you cannot be bought, intimidated, or seduced, they either respect your boundaries or reveal themselves as people you should distance yourself from anyway. This inner fire is not fanaticism. The Stoic holds principles firmly, while remaining open to evidence that they may be wrong. It is conviction with humility, strength with flexibility. Like bamboo that bends but does not break, the Stoic adapts to circumstances while maintaining core integrity. The synthesis, living like a modern Stoic. Now that we've explored these 15 profound lessons, How do we synthesize them into a coherent life practice? How do we live as Stoics in the 21st century with all its unique challenges and complexities? First, begin each day with intentional reflection. Marcus Aurelius began each morning by writing in his journal what we know as his meditations. He wasn't writing for posterity, but to clarify his thoughts, reaffirm his principles, and mentally prepare himself for the day's challenges. You can do the same. Spend 5 minutes each morning reflecting on Stoic principles, setting intentions, and practicing negative visualization. Second, implement the dichotomy of moment-to-moment control. When any situation arises, immediately ask, what about this is within my control? Focus all your energy there, release the rest. This single practice consistently applied will transform your life experience. Third, embrace regular voluntary discomfort. Not masochism, but inoculation, occasional fasting, cold showers, challenging physical exercise, difficult conversations you've been putting off. Every voluntary discomfort builds resilience for inevitable involuntary discomforts. Fourth, practice active gratitude, not vague, generic gratitude, but specific present appreciation. The taste of your morning coffee? The feel of hot water in the shower? The ability to read these words. The Stoics understood that gratitude isn't just about feeling good, it's about accurately recognizing reality. You've won the cosmic lottery, simply by being alive and conscious. Fifth, study the masters. Read Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, Seneca. But don't just read, implement it. Choose a passage each week and live it. Test these principles against your experience. Keep what works. Adapt what needs adjusting. Sixth, find your Stoic Sangha, a community of people committed to ethical growth and wisdom. It can be online or in person, formal or informal. But find others who share your commitment to living philosophically. Iron sharpens iron. You need others to challenge and support your growth. Seventh, practice amor fati daily. When something goes wrong, and something always will, pause before reacting. Ask, how is this happening for me? What lesson does it contain? How can I use this for growth? Turn each obstacle into fuel for your development, the path forward, your invitation to transformation. We've reached the end of this exploration, but it's really only the beginning. The lessons I've shared are not just intellectual ideas to contemplate, but practical tools for transformation. The question now is, what will you do with them? Most people who watch videos like this nod in agreement, feel momentarily inspired, then fall back into their habitual patterns. They add these teachings to their collection of unapplied knowledge. Don't be the majority. Be the exception who actually implements, who actually changes, who actually grows. Start small. Choose one lesson, just one, that resonates most deeply with you. Maybe it's the dichotomy of control, maybe amor fati, maybe memento mori. Commit to practicing that one lesson consistently for a week. Just 1 week. Notice what changes. Notice how your life experience shifts. Remember, Stoicism is not about becoming emotionally dead or passively accepting injustice. It's about developing unshakable resilience, clarity of purpose, deep peace, and the ability to act effectively in the world. It's about becoming the person you are capable of being, realizing your potential as a rational, social human being. The Stoics believed in pronoia, the idea that the universe conspires in your development. Every challenge is a gift in disguise, every obstacle an opportunity, every loss a chance to discover what truly matters. This is not a naive denial of suffering, but a profound recognition that suffering, properly approached, is the path to wisdom. As you leave this video and return to your life, take with you this truth. You have within you everything necessary to live a life of meaning, purpose, and deep peace. Not at some future moment when circumstances change, but right now, as you are, where you are. The obstacles in your path are not impediments to the good life. They are the path to the good life. The philosophical tools we've explored have survived millennia because they work. They've been tested in the most extreme circumstances imaginable: battlefields, deathbeds, prisons, palaces. If they worked for Marcus Aurelius ruling a collapsing empire, for Epictetus surviving slavery, for Stockdale surviving torture, they can work for you navigating the challenges of the modern world. Conclusion: the call to wisdom as we conclude this profound journey through Stoic wisdom. I want to leave you with a final thought. Seneca wrote, "Every new thing excites the mind, but a disciplined mind needs no novelty to find satisfaction." In our age of endless distraction, endless scrolling, and the endless search for the next hit, this is revolutionary wisdom. The good life isn't elsewhere. It's not in the next job, the next relationship, the next purchase. It's available here now through the application of these timeless principles. The peace you seek, the strength you desire, the wisdom you crave. It's all already within you, waiting to be discovered through disciplined practice. But, and this is crucial, knowledge without action is sterile. Wisdom without implementation is mere armchair philosophy. The Stoics were practitioners above all else. They lived their philosophy in the trenches of real life, not just in academic discussions. So here's my final challenge to you. Don't just be a consumer of wisdom. Become a practitioner. Don't just agree with these ideas, live them. Don't just understand them intellectually, embody them existentially. If this video touched you, if these lessons awakened a recognition of truths you've always known but never articulated, then you have a responsibility. A responsibility to live by this wisdom, a responsibility to exemplify these virtues, a responsibility to pass on what you've learned. The world desperately needs people who embody Stoic wisdom. In an age of reactive outrage, we need people who respond with rational equanimity. In a culture of rampant consumerism, we need people who demonstrate that enough is abundance. In a time of tribal polarization, we need people who recognize universal humanity. You can be one of these people, not by special talent or unique circumstances, but by choice. A choice to apply these lessons, a choice to do the inner work. Choose to become what the Stoics called wise, not perfect, but progressing, not enlightened, but awakening. Before you go, take these 3 actions. First, subscribe to the channel and turn on all notifications, not for me, but for you. Each video is an opportunity to deepen your practice, refine your understanding, and strengthen your resolve. Transformation requires consistent exposure to wisdom. Second, share this video with at least one person who could benefit from these lessons. Perhaps someone going through difficult times, someone seeking direction, someone ready to awaken. Be the catalyst for someone else's transformation. Third, comment below with the one lesson you commit to practicing this week. Public accountability increases the likelihood of follow-through. Furthermore, your courage may inspire others to make similar commitments. Remember the words of Marcus Aurelius: "What we are doing now echoes into eternity." The choices you make today, no matter how small they seem, create ripples through time. The person you become through Stoic practice influences everyone you meet, who influences others, creating ripples of impact beyond your imagination. The ancient Stoics believed that philosophy without action is empty, that wisdom without practice is useless. They left us not just ideas, but a way of life, a way that promises not ease but strength, not comfort but character, not superficial happiness but deep satisfaction. The Stoic path is not easy. It requires discipline, courage, persistence. It requires a willingness to confront uncomfortable truths about yourself and the world. It requires sacrificing immediate pleasures for lasting virtues. But the rewards are immeasurable. unshakable peace, clarity of purpose, resilience in the face of adversity, the ability to love life fully while holding it lightly. You are at a crossroads. Down one path lies more of the same. Reactivity, anxiety, the pursuit of pleasures that don't satisfy, the avoidance of pains that teach valuable lessons. On the other path lies the philosophical life, deliberate, conscious, virtuous, free. The choice, as always, is yours. And it is the only thing that will always be completely yours. Your ability to choose your response, choose your values, choose your path. No external circumstance can take that away from you. No person can force you to betray your principles. No event can make you less than you choose to be. This is the ultimate gift of Stoicism, recognition of your absolute sovereignty over your inner life. You may not control events, but you control your response to them. You may not control outcomes, but you control your effort. You may not control others, but you control your own character. With this recognition comes responsibility. You can no longer blame circumstances for your unhappiness. You can no longer use others as excuses for your behavior. You can no longer postpone the life you want to live waiting for perfect conditions. Conditions will never be perfect. The timing will never be ideal. The only time is now. The only place is here. The only person who can live your life is you. So, live it. Live it with intention, with virtue, with courage, with wisdom. Live it as the Stoics taught. Not in preparation for some future, but in total engagement with the present. Not in avoidance of difficulty, but in embrace of challenge. Not in pursuit of pleasure, but in pursuit of excellence. The world is waiting for the person you are capable of becoming. Not out of expectation or pressure, but out of necessity. We need people who embody these ancient virtues, who demonstrate that a different life is possible, who show by example that wisdom, justice, courage, and temperance are not relics of the past, but urgent needs of the present. Be one of those people. Not tomorrow, not when you are ready onto, not when circumstances change. Now, with what you have, where you are. As you are, the Stoic path stretches before you, trodden by emperors and slaves, generals and merchants, all united in pursuit of the same thing, a life well lived. Not measured by external standards of success, but by internal character development. Not judged by how much you have accumulated, but by who you have become. Join this ancient lineage. Take up the torch that has been passed down through millennia. Carry it forward in your own life, in your own way, in your own time, but carry it. The world needs your light. The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. Unwavering character development begins with a single choice. The transformation of your life begins with a single lesson consistently applied. You have the tools, you have the knowledge, you have the ability. The only question that remains is, do you have the will? The Stoics would say you do, that within every human being is the capacity for virtue, wisdom, excellence, not as a special gift, but as a birthright. Not as a rare talent, but as a universal potential waiting to be actualized. This is your moment. This is your opportunity. This is your calling. Not for greatness as the world defines it, but for greatness as your soul recognizes it. The greatness of living with integrity, purpose, virtue, and peace. The suffering you have experienced, the dissatisfaction you feel, the sense that something is missing, all of this has been preparation for this moment. The moment when you stop looking for answers outside and begin cultivating wisdom within. The moment when you stop being a victim of circumstances and become the master of your answers. I leave you with a final passage from Marcus Aurelius, written in his tent nearly 2,000 years ago, but speaking directly to you here now. At dawn, when you have difficulty getting out of bed, say to yourself, I have to go to work as a human being. Why should I complain about going to do what? I was born to do the things for which I was brought into this world. Or is this what I'm here for? To snuggle under blankets and keep warm? But it's more pleasant. Were you born to feel pleasure? Was it for this? For passivity? Not for action? Not for exercising your faculties? Arise, act, live, not like the unconscious masses, dragged along by impulses and circumstances, but as a conscious practitioner of the art of living. Not as a victim of fate, but as a collaborator with it. Not as a slave to your emotions, but as a master of your responses. The Stoic path awaits. Ancient wisdom calls. The life you are capable of living beckons. Answer the call. Embrace the path. Live. Wisdom. The choice, as always and forever, is yours.